Good evening, welcome to Spectrum News at 4. I am Uyai Aneka and coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Buhari congratulates UK's Queen Elizabeth on Platinum Jubilee. APC disqualifies 10 presidential aspirants. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg calls for preparedness for the long haul over Ukraine war. Details of the stories and more in a moment.
Weapons, and with the more time.
First in our news this afternoon is a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the occasion of her Platinum Jubilee. The head of the Commonwealth of Nations marked her 70th year amid celebrations in the United Kingdom. In his message, the president hailed her milestones, including being the youngest ever on the throne and handling her role with grace, noting that the Queen is the first British monarch to reach 7 decades on the throne. He described the Queen as a loyal, patriotic, and compassionate leader who works for the people, not as a ruler, but as a friend and a compatriot. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has urged European countries to look to Africa for the solution to the resources supply challenges currently facing the global economy. He spoke at a political and business leaders forum jointly organized by the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, the Ministry of Trade, and the Confederation of Employers in Madrid, the Spanish capital. The president, who is in Spain on a 3-day state visit, told the forum that by reaching out to African countries, especially Nigeria, which is the largest economy on the continent, Europe would be solving both its current and future economic challenges, and both continents will be improving their mutual economies. According to him, Nigeria, which had hitherto been focused by foreign economic partners for petroleum resources, is also rich in many other sectors like agriculture, healthcare, light, manufacturing, and a host of others, and have a larger consumer market. Away from that, President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a message to his classmates at the military training school in 1962, Juventus Chijioke Ojukwu, as he turns 80. In the message signed by his spokesman, Garba Shehu, the president recalled the grueling drills and trainings with the then cadet officer in training and how they eventually got commissioned as officers of the Nigerian army. Buhari saluted 60 years of relationship with Ojukwu, who is also a former House of Representatives member representing Idemili Federal Constituency in the Second Republic. The president wished him longer days in good health and greater service to God and humanity. Elsewhere, the federal government has said the power sector is currently on a fast track to delivering service to Nigerians and urged stakeholders to work together to achieve the feat. The Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, who said this in Abuja while inaugurating the new governing board of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, called on the members of the board to speak and act with one voice as the power sector was on track to quicken the delivery of service to Nigerians. According to him, the electricity that is being delivered is not at the level to support the economy and the population. To the judiciary now, where Justice Inyang of the Federal High Court in Abuja has fixed August 29 for judgment in a suit seeking to extradite the embattled suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari to the United States of America for trial over alleged internet fraud. The judge fixed the date today after taking arguments for and against the suits by parties involved. Recall that Kyari, whose arguments were presented by Nureni Jimo, SAN, had asked the court to refuse the extradition request on the ground that the committed offenses did not warrant the federal government to send him to America for trial. He informed the court that more than a year before his arrest, he had written the Attorney General of the Federation and the Inspector General of Police, notifying them that he had opened a channel of communication with a suspected internet fraudster Raymond Abbas, popularly known as Hush Puppy. In the two letters tendered in the court, Kerry explained that the purpose was to give confidence to the suspected fraudster and lure him to come to Nigeria, where an ambush was already laid for a sting operation by his strike force. He further told the court that the wire fraud charge brought against him by the American government was not known as an offense under Extradition Act and therefore should not be allowed by the court to be used to extradite him. Meanwhile, the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory in Wuse has remanded Peter Nwachukwu, husband of the late gospel singer Osinachi, at the Kuje Correctional Facility, pending the hearing and determination of the homicide-related suit instituted against him by the Attorney General of the Federation. Justice N.K. Nwosu Iheme gave the order after he pleaded not guilty to 23 counts bordering on domestic violence and homicide. Among others, the judge ordered that the suspect be remanded at the correctional facility while trial was adjourned to June 16 and June 17. Recall that Nwachukwu's wife died on April 8th, and many of her colleagues had accused her husband of subjecting the deceased to domestic violence, leading to her death. Meanwhile, the government have claimed that the contravened sections 104 and 379 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, section 221 of the Penal Code, and the Violence Act Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015. On education, the Academic Staff Union of Universities has expressed optimism about its ongoing meeting with Professor Nimi Briggs' committee, describing the negotiation as being progressive. Speaking in an interview with newsmen, ASU National President Professor Emmanuel Sadike said the union had been negotiating with the Briggs Committee since last week over its demands. Recall that ASU commenced its ongoing strike on February 14, 2022, after the federal government failed to meet some of its demands, including the release of revitalization funds for universities, renegotiation of the 2009 FGN ASU agreement, release of earned allowances for university lecturers, and deployment of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution. Meanwhile, the Federal Ministry of Education, in a statement by the Minister for Education, Adamu, says it has received the reports of the 21 white paper drafting panels, which were constituted in March of 2022 for tertiary institutions across the country. In politics, ahead of the presidential primary of the All Progressives Congress APC scheduled to hold between June 6th and 8th, the ruling party has disqualified 10 presidential aspirants. The chairman of the Presidential Screening Committee and the former national chairman of APC, Chief John Oyegun, disclosed this on Friday in Abuja when he submitted the committee's report to the party. The aspirants that were disqualified have not been made known yet. To electoral matters now, where the Independent National Electoral Commission has announced the release of its regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections 2022. The Commission announced this on its official Twitter page at INEC Nigeria today. The 37-page document, downloadable from the Commission's website, contains 106 guidelines and regulations for elections as well as health measures during conduct of elections. In Article 30 of the guideline, the Commission stated that telephones and electronic devices capable of taking pictures are not allowed in polling booths. To Rivers State now, where Governor Nyesom Wike has reviewed plans to reconstitute the State Executive Council. His decision to reconstitute the council followed his communication to the State Assembly for the screening and confirmation of 3 commissioner nominees. The Speaker of the Assembly, Ikunyi Owaji Iban, on Friday read Governor Wike's letter during plenary. The nominees include 2 former commissioners on the immediate past cabinet and 1 former special advisor to Governor Wike. Recall that the governor had on May 24th announced the dissolution of the council through his special assistant, Kelvin Ebiri, with immediate effect. Meanwhile, Benue State Governor Samuel Otham has reiterated his call for complete autonomy for the judiciary to enable that arm of government dispassionately uphold the rule of law. Governor Otham made the call in Makadi during the swearing-in ceremony of 3 newly appointed High Court judges in the state judiciary. The governor, who further recommended that all entitlements due to the judiciary should be deducted at the source from the Federation accounts and remitted directly to the heads of courts for onward payment to the judicial staff, noted that at the time when the government and the public are calling for quick dispensation of justice, the judiciary must live up to its responsibility, as democracy cannot thrive without adherence to the rule of law. Now to Africa, where calm gradually returns to Kimbuma, a town 20 kilometers north of the city of Goma in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. After a week of intense fighting between the Congolese army and M23 rebels, who the Congolese authorities claim to be supported by the Rwandan army. According to the UN, in 8 days of fighting, more than 72,000 people fled their homes in the territory of the Nyiragongo and the neighboring territory of Rushuru. The refugees are now staring at an acute hunger due to overcrowding and lack of donor funds. Reports say many displaced people are still crowded into schoolyards in the area as they are afraid to go home. Still in Africa, Senegalese President Macky Sall, current chairman of the African Union, will travel to Russia for talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Sochi, his office said. In a statement from the president's office, the visit is part of the efforts of the current chairmanship of the Union to contribute to the lull in the war in Ukraine and the release of stocks of grain and fertilizer, whose blockage particularly affects African countries. The statement noted that the visit takes place at the invitation of Mr. Putin, adding that President Sall will be accompanied by the chairman of the African Union Commission, Chadian Moussa Faki. Meanwhile, Chad has declared a food emergency in the country. The declaration comes as a meeting between the chairman of the AU Commission and the Russian president is scheduled today. A decree signed by the chief of the military transition, Mohammad Idris Deby, calls on all national and international partners to help the population, citing a constant deterioration of the food and nutritional situation and a growing risk of food scarcity if no assistance was given to the Sahelian nation. Meanwhile, the United Nations estimated last year that 5.5 million Chadians, or more than a third of the population, were in need of urgent humanitarian aid. The situation has only worsened following the Ukraine war. On the foreign scene, President Joe Biden has said that US should ban assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines to tackle the carnage of gun violence. In a primetime speech to the nation from the White House, President Biden, who said too many places in America had become killing fields, noting that if Congress could not outlaw such weapons, it should seek to raise the age to buy them from 18 to 21. The U.S. president also called for expanding federal background checks and nationwide red flag laws, which allow law enforcement to remove weapons from anyone deemed dangerous.
Weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21. Strengthen background checks, enact safe storage law and red flag laws. Repeal the immunity that protects gun manufacturers from liability. Address the mental health crisis, deepening the trauma of gun violence and as a consequence of that violence. These are rational, common sense measures. Here's what it all means. It all means this. We should reinstate the assault weapons ban on high-capacity magazines that we passed in 1994 with bipartisan support in Congress and the support of law enforcement. 9 categories of semi-automatic weapons were included in that ban, like AK-47s and AR-15s. And in the 10 years it was law, mass shootings went down. But after Republicans let the law expire in 2004, and those weapons were allowed to be sold again, mass shootings tripled. Those are the facts. A few years ago, the family of the inventor of the AR-15 said he would have been horrified to know that its design was being used to slaughter children and other innocent lives instead of being used as a military weapon on the battlefields.
Still on the foreign scene, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which began on the 24th of February, rages on into its 100th day. According to Ukraine's President Zelensky, Moscow's forces are now in control of 20% of Ukrainian territory, and Russia's army is trying to break Ukraine's defense in the eastern region from all directions. Fighting is raging in the key city of Severodonetsk, which is now largely under the control of Russian troops. Taking Severodonetsk would mean Russia controls almost all of Luhansk, part of Moscow's bid to capture the wider Donbass. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said Western countries need to prepare for the long haul. Speaking to journalists after meeting U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House, Stoltenberg said NATO must continue to support Ukraine in what was becoming a long and sustained conflict. Still to come in the news.
Eviction of all Russian troops from all of Ukrainian land. Is NATO prepared to support Ukraine with the more weapons and with the more time it will need to do that?
NATO allies have provided a lot of support. They are ready to continue to provide support to Ukraine. And I think the only way to address the issue of what kind of settlement can we see at the end of this war is to trust the Ukrainian political leadership, the Ukrainian people, to make those hard decisions on potential compromises. Our responsibility is to provide support to them to uphold the right for self-defense and the right which is enshrined in the UN Charter and to stand up against the aggressive invasion of Russia.
Ukrainian President Zelensky in recent days has defined victory as the eviction of all Russian troops from all of Ukrainian land. Is NATO prepared?
Still to come in the news, FIFA World Cup trophy towards South Africa. Stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. On our business news, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICAN, has elected its 58th president, Tijani Issa. His investiture took place in Lagos and was witnessed by the governors of Lagos State and Jigawa State, the Minister of Education, Adamu, sister professional bodies, the academic community, and other relevant stakeholders. In his acceptance speech, the new ICANN president promised to hold dear the position of trust and responsibility reposed in him by his professional colleagues, with a commitment to live the ICANN ideal of integrity, professionalism, and defend the public interest. Still on business, the Central Bank of Nigeria has ordered banks and payment service providers to accept indemnity from customers for highly secured online funds transfers. It stated this in a circular signed by the Director of Payment System Management Department, Musa Jimo, that banks are hereby required to accept indemnity from customers for highly secured online funds transfer above 1 million naira for individual and 10 million naira for corporate, subject to a maximum of 25 million naira for individuals and 250 million naira for corporate. It also noted that banks must provide customers with the option of electronic or paper indemnity based on the customer's preference, implement electronic indemnity with stricter controls requiring biometric verification of identity, as well as adhere to multiple factor authentication for highly secured online funds transfer. Now to health, where a physician with the Accident and Emergency Department, Federal Medical Center, Abuja, Dr. Arume Adejo, has decried the lack of equipment to treat accident victims, especially those in critical condition in tertiary hospitals in the country. Dr. Adejo, who disclosed this during an interview with journalists, lamented that the lack of equipment was leading to avoidable deaths of accident victims, noting that the cause of death of accident victims requiring emergency care was a lack of CT scans and a shortage of blood at the blood banks. Recall that the World Health Organization states that road traffic accidents cost low and middle income countries between 1.0 and 2.0% of their gross national product annually, more than the development aid the country receives. Still on health, Morocco's National Regulatory Agency, overseeing the use of cannabis for medical use, met for the first time in one of the last steps before legalization in the world's top cannabis resin producer. The North African nation adopted a law in 2021 provisionally authorizing the legal uses of cannabis for medical, cosmetic, and industrial uses, and tasked the national agency to oversee the process. Chaired by Interior Minister Abdel Lofa Lafitte, the National Agency for the Regulation of Cannabis Activities approved its organization chart and budget for the year 2022, which will be responsible for controlling all stages of the production chain, from the import of seeds to the marketing of cannabis products, as well as overseeing licensing procedures for national and international operators in the legal cannabis industry. In sports, after kicking African champions the Tigers out of the 2022 FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup, the Federation of International Basketball Associations has reportedly threatened further sanctions against Nigeria. The decision to have Nigeria banned from the World Cup in Sydney, Australia, came after the federal government withdrew from international basketball competitions. Sport Minister Sunday Dare stated that the withdrawal, which took effect 3 weeks ago, was part of government's efforts to restore the sport from the grassroots, as well as put an end to the lingering leadership crisis that has rocked the factionalized Nigeria Basketball Federation for close to a decade. A week after the withdrawal, FIBA, in a letter addressed to factional Nigeria Basketball Federation President Musa Ahmadu Kida, signed by Jamil Lamboy, head of legal FIBA, dated May 18, 2022, warned Nigeria of possible sanctions. Recall that FIBA in that letter stated that Nigeria was at the risk of further sanctions, saying the withdrawal was in breach of Article 9.7 of FIBA's General Statutes, which states that national member federations shall manage their affairs independently and with no influence from third parties, adding that on the initiative of the Secretary General, FIBA Central Board may suspend a national member federation for the breach of Article 9.7. Still in sports, the mere presence of the magnificent FIFA World Cup trophy has brought back so many fond memories and feelings of nostalgia to both soccer players and fans in South Africa. The FIFA World Cup trophy is on a global tour of 51 countries that includes the 32 nations that have qualified for the 2022 edition in Qatar later this year. One of those stops was in South Africa, where Brazil's 2002 World Cup winner, Juliano Belletti, accompanied the coveted silverware as it touched down at the Lanseria International Airport in Johannesburg on May 28th. Day 2 of the worldwide tour saw the sport's biggest prize visit the home of South African football's Soweto, with fans flocking to get a rare glimpse of the trophy and a memorable photo. Meanwhile, with 5 representatives from the continent heading to Qatar, there was a real sense of belief that one of them could bring the trophy to Africa. On entertainment, the Big Brother Nigeria Season 6 reunion started off with glees and glamour on Thursday night. The opening night showcased the introduction of the reunion show and the former housemates as the former BB Nigeria Shine Your Eye housemates came in with their A-game to the reunion opening night, showing up in style. The host, Ebuka Obi Uchendu, noted that Nee was absent from the opening show because he was healing from a medical issue.
Yes, we do. Hello, Rose. How you doing?
I'm good.
Have you recovered from almost winning?
Still on entertainment, the US mission in Nigeria and giants in the Nigerian music industry have thrown their weight behind the upcoming 15th edition of the Headies Awards. Speaking at a recent event, acting US Consul General Brandon Hosfeth said the cultural and artistic exchanges are just one way the United States partners with the people and government of Nigeria. Meanwhile, executive producer of the Headies Music Awards, Ayo Anima Shaun, has said this is the first year the Headies will be held outside of Nigeria, describing Atlanta as home to many prominent hip-hop and R&B artists and their record labels. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 4. I am Uyai Anekan. Thanks for watching and do enjoy the rest of your evening.